Well, good to see everybody this morning. If you have your Bibles, turn to the little book of 2 John, verses 4 through 6. If you don't have a Bible with you, there are some on the pews laying there around. But also, I'll put the words on the screen so everybody has it. 2 John. It's a little bitty book. There's actually not multiple chapters. There is only one chapter. And so we looked at the first 3 verses last week, and this week we will be looking at the next 2. Title of this series is Watch Yourselves, John's Instruction for the Faithful. We'll get into the Watch Yourselves next week, but today we're going to be talking about walking in truth and walking in love, 2 things that John asks us to be about as Christians, and so we'll look at those today. Verse 4 of 2 John. I was very glad to find some of your children walking in truth, just as we have received commandment to do from the Father. Now I ask you, lady, not as though I were writing to you a new commandment, but the one which we have heard from the beginning, that we love one another. And this is love, that we walk according to his commandments. This is the commandment, just as you have heard from the beginning, that you should walk in it. Very brief, just a couple verses that we're going to spend some time discussing today. Watch yourselves, walk in truth, and walk in love. So John reads this letter and he speaks to the chosen lady. We saw that in verse 1, and when we talked last week about who this chosen lady is, we determined that this is referring to a local church that John is writing to, but it's also to the church in general. This is not a specific woman. He is referring to the church. And so in that same light, he says, I was very glad to find some of your children walking in the truth. Well, who are the children of the church? Well, that would be the members of the church. That would be the Christians that are in the church. And so that is who he's referring to. He is very glad to find some of your children walking in the truth. Now, whenever you first read that, you may have had the same thought that I did, that word some in there. Now, some translations don't have it, and that's because it actually isn't in the original Greek text. It's not some. The indication is that he did not see everyone, and that's why they put that word some in there. He has come across some people. Well, that's true in life. I don't know everybody in the world, right? I know some of the people in the world. And so I don't know everybody in the church. I know some of the people in the church. That's the idea here that's being said. John says, I was very glad to find some of your children walking in the truth. This is not a negative statement. Right? And a lot of times people read it as negative. They think, oh, only some people were walking in the truth in the church. And I don't know how many churches you've been in, but that's a thought that occurs often in the church, that only some of the people in the church are walking in the truth. However, that's not what John is saying. John's not saying that negatively, that there's only some people walking in the truth. He's just saying that he's only come across some people, and guess what? They were walking in the truth. So it's a good thing. It's a positive thing. And oftentimes, I think as Christians, just a little brief bit of application for ourselves. We as Christians look at other Christians and we make judgments. And we determine whether or not they're walking in the truth. And oftentimes, we don't know what's going on in their life, what's going on in their heart, the internal struggle that's going on inside of them, the things that they believe. We can't see those things. We only see actions. And so we don't have the full picture like God does. That's why the old prophet said God looks at the heart, right? And when he was talking about David, man looks at the outward appearance. Man looks at the circumstances. Man looks at the actions, but God looks internally at the heart. And so John says, some are walking in the truth because he sees some legitimately walking in the truth. But as far as the others are concerned, he doesn't make an assumption that they're not walking in the truth. He leaves that alone, leaves that in God's hands, lets God look at the heart. And I think that's important for us as Christians, that we ought to be cautious about making judgments of other people, other Christians, other churches. We ought to just recognize that some people are walking in the truth and leave it at that. That's kind of what goes on here. I was very glad to find some of your children walking in truth, just as we have received the commandment to do from the Father.